Welcome to the Broncos podcast with Troy Rank. I'm your host, Troy Rank, columnist for the Denver Post. Hope you're having a wonderful start to your weekend wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, your car, the radio, on your phone, maybe even on the work computer as you're sneaking out early on a Friday. Looks like we're finally going to get some cooler weather in the 70s, so that's been a nice change. It has been smoking hot. I got the Bulldog Bentley out early this morning, but it was a little humid for him. We said it was 64 out, which normally would be perfect for a bully, for those who have a bully or dogs that don't deal well with heat. But a little bit of humidity, a little sticky, which brings me to today's topic. The 53-man roster, getting a little sticky, a little greasy on some of these final decisions, but a surprising move this week that provided clarity for the receiving corps. Devaughn Vele, my guy, everyday Vele, is out, traded to the Saints. What does this mean for the wide receiver corps? What does it look like in some of these positions for the 53-man roster? And what is the plan for the starters versus the Saints? It's a morning game, just for those listening here on a Friday. 11 a.m. Mountain start, so set your alarms. Starters are set to play either one long series or two series. I think some might not. I mean, I don't know why you would play a Pat Surtain, for instance. There's a couple of defensive guys I wouldn't play. Pat Surtain, Zach Allen, Nick Bonito would be tops on that list. But for now, it appears the starters are going to play. And some roster decisions still left to be made. Probably 3 to 4 roster spots up for grabs. And a name that Broncos fans were getting comfortable with. Devaughn Vele, out, traded to the Saints. I'll explain what this means for not only Vele, but the wide receiving corps. That's all coming up next here on my Broncos podcast with Troy Rick. Have you been hurt in a car wreck or injured at work? What are you waiting for? Give my friends at Hoggatt Injury Law a call. Their motto with us, it's personal. That's because it is with Darby. He's a good dude. I've known Darby for years. We became good friends. Many of his clients have become his good friend. You don't even have to pay Darby up front. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. So again, if you've been hurt in a car wreck or injured at work, you want someone serious who knows what they're doing, give Darby's team a call. 1-833-HOGGATT. That's 1-833-464-4288. And you can see the website right there, YouTube listeners and viewers, www.hoggattlaw.com. When you face curveballs from family challenges, divorce, legal separation, child support, alimony, custody, you need a lawyer who understands the human dynamics, the courtroom, and is willing to fight for your rights. You need Ted Shih. A graduate of Cal Berkeley, Ted brings 40 years of courtroom experience and 20 years of family law experience to your corner. He's been a social worker, a police detective, but first and foremost, he's a trial lawyer. He has tried cases across the country and our state. He has taught young lawyers across the country the ins and outs of the courtroom for the National Institute of Trial Advocacy. Martindale Hubbell ranks Ted among the top lawyers in the country. You want an expert to navigate your family challenge? Call Ted. His passion is putting you first. Ted will work to settle your case, but he's not afraid to go toe-to-toe in a trial to protect your interests. Ted can be reached at theoshih@aol.com. That's TheoShih@aol.com. Or, and write this down, 303-475-2981. That's 303-475-2981. Ted promises to respond to your concerns within 24 hours, 365 days a year. Welcome back to the Broncos pod. I am Troy Rank, columnist for the Denver Post. We are in the stretch run. The Broncos' final preseason game is Saturday against the Saints. And for the first time in many years, they faced some tough roster decisions. There were times over the last 6-7 years pre-Sean Payton and even partly, Payton's first year, you couldn't really get to 53 guys that deserve to be on an NFL roster. I mean, you could stop probably at 48, 47, and that just was a reflection of lack of depth, lack of talent. I've told you all. I mean, I would cover these games and look at the 22 and say, how many of the Broncos would you take over another team's starter? It's a small number. Usually the conversation stopped after Justin Simmons, Pat Surtain. And then eventually, it's changed this past year with Bonito, Zach Allen, Pat Surtain, You look at, now they have Greenlaw and Hufanga. I mean, you can go across the board. A couple of the linemen, certainly Quinn Miners is in that conversation. But you have, and in Bo Nix on many Sundays will be a better quarterback than the one he's facing. You're starting about double figure guys now that are better than the other team. That's a change. And it's reflected now in the depth of the roster where you have to make tough decisions. And one was made this week, and it surprised all of us. Devaughn Vele, I wrote way back in June that I thought, man, if they can't come to an agreement with Cortland Sutton and Sutton's side plays hardball and wants T. Higgins money, could Vele be the guy? I mean, he was an absolute rock star in June. And then late May, early June, when he missed the day in mandatory minicamp, I believe he had his knee scoped. He had some knee procedure, and he just wasn't right when he came back in training camp. And he started to finally gain traction last week, but it was clear that Pat Bryant and more specifically Troy Franklin had moved ahead of him in the coach's eyes based on usage. And it's an interesting proposition. I still thought he was going to make the team. He was never in danger of getting cut. Let's end that right now. But Sean Payton believes in these receivers way more than the rest of us. I thought they should have them more established too. I thought they should have, maybe gotten Travion Henderson in the draft, more sure things. But this is a guy with a background in personnel, puts the time in watching the college film more than perhaps any head coach. He helped find Vele along with George Payton in the 7th round. They turned him into a productive player, second in targets among receivers last year. And he had 12 first downs. So this idea they're better without Vele, I'm not going to say that right now because he showed consistency. Part of it was his age, and he's 27 now going into the season because he went on in high school, you guys have heard me tell this story. He went on a mission. He was a 0-star recruit, if you will. Went on a mission and walked on at Utah, and all he did was just prove that he deserved playing time throughout the years. And he would have been drafted higher, but their quarterback situation was a mess at Utah, especially as last year Rising got hurt, and it was just a mess. It's not unlike what the Broncos dealt with for years. It sabotaged and undercut his numbers. But he showed up, and he showed consistency in NFL games, not preseason. He was a star in preseason last year. We remember that. So there's a risk here because Troy Franklin, given the same amount of opportunities last year, didn't prove it. He was inconsistent. And we don't know what Pat Bryant's going to do. He has been an absolute shining light in this preseason and in practice. And he's showed he can pick things up because in June, he wasn't. Pat Bryant wasn't even on the radar. And then typical of guys who are smart players, who understand the time that needs to be put in the film room, they progress. And Franklin matured. He got bigger, changed his number, he's a little more physical. And so now Franklin looks like, if you were to rank him now, the number 2 with Bryant in that Lil Jordan Humphrey role. And then you have Sherfield, who has stood out. And, of course, Marvin Mims, who could be your 2 on some days. He's a little bit still more of a gadget player. It made Vele expendable. So why do it, though? Why trade a guy who got you 12 first downs on 3rd down last year, who was a consistent target? Well, there's some overlap with Sutton. With Sutton signed, that's number 1. Like the long-term forecast for Vele changes a little bit right then, because for me, if they played hardball with Sutton and moved on, or made it clear that this was Sutton's last year, Vele makes a lot more sense. Sutton's up is secure for long term, so that made Vele vulnerable. The second thing is he wasn't the same after the knee issue. He just wasn't. He gained traction, but he had trouble getting back ahead. He lost enough time that he had trouble catching back up with Franklin and Bryant. And the third thing is Franklin and Bryant emerged, and Sherfield maybe even more as a receiver than perhaps even they thought, because he was signed to be a special teams guy. So why trade him? Well, again, the Saints offer you a 4th and a 7th for a 7th round pick who's 27. I mean, it's almost malpractice if you don't trade him. Again, I like Vele as much as anybody, everyday Vele. But if Peyton is right on Bryant and Franklin, it'd be criminal not to get a 4th round and a 7th round pick for Vele. A guy who was going to have trouble being active on game day, at least early in the season. Do I think eventually he was going to play? Yeah, he was a healthy scratch last year once, missed a game for injury. He only played 13 games. That's why I'm saying his production was impressive. But at some point, you put your trust in the coach. I'm willing to give Sean Payton the benefit of the doubt here. I'm not crazy about it because of the risk. But I'm telling you what my own eyes are telling me out at training camp, Vele wasn't popping anymore. It didn't feel like he was part of the plan. And again, with Franklin, Bryant, and Sherfield playing well, and of course Mims, but he's in a different category along with Sutton. Someone comes to you and says, we're going to give you a 4th and a 7th. That's more than the Cowboys got. That's more than the Steelers got for George Pickens. Part of it's he's, a bit of a handful, considered a handful to deal with coaches. With his sideline outbursts and considered a selfish player, but still, Pickens has done it in the league, and he has at times all-pro talent. And Vele's 27, so to get that kind of offer, I mean, you really can't turn it down. Now, will I be one of the first to line up if in week 2 at Indy, the Franklin has 2 drops and Bryant, the stage is too big for him? And the only guy they can throw to is Sutton and Ingram, and they lose a close game because they can't get anyone else open, then yeah, I'll say, yeah, it was the wrong move because they can't afford to lose a game because of a young receiver can't get open. But Peyton's earned the benefit of the doubt, as he did with Vele last year. I agreed with him cutting Tim Patrick last year to keep Vele because they were rebuilding, young, hungry. I love Tim Patrick, love everything about him. But it doesn't make sense to keep that's insulting to Tim, to keep a veteran coming off 2 missed seasons when you're trying to build a young core. But this has feelings of, if you're watching that Dallas Cowboys Netflix special where Jimmy Johnson and they go from 7 and 9 and then they kind of break through, he just keeps getting rid of guys and bringing in better versions of them until you look up in 3-4 years and God damn, this roster's good. And that's part of this. It's the Darwinism of athletics, that meritocracy that while we like Vele, Peyton clearly thinks that Franklin and Bryant, or one of them, is going to be better than him and is going to get those reps. And if someone comes to you with a 4th and a 7th for a former 7th round pick who's 27, again, you make that trade. That's the trade that the Rockies don't make. They hold on to the guy, and then he's inactive half the season. Then he has no value, and he gets cut next offseason. But to do that, you have to have people that replace him you think are good, and they do. But again, there's risk involved. I'm not going to sit here and say it's unbelievable, but what my eyes told me in camp is as Vele was getting phased out, the injury set him back. He had clearly moved behind both Franklin and Bryant in the preference of the coaches. And now, boy, those two, the pressure's on them to prove it. Because Vele did prove it. He did prove he was a reliable receiver last year. So it's on them. So what does that mean for the 53-man projection? Well, again, I think they go with 5 receivers, as we've talked about. Sutton, Mims, you've got Bryant, you've got Franklin, and then you've got Sherfield. Could Joaquin Davis make it? Or Courtney Jackson? One of them might slip on as a 6th receiver. I kind of doubt it. Just because that player is almost never active on game day. So it becomes a little bit of a wasted roster spot. But I do believe with the trade of Vele, it creates an opportunity to keep, as we discussed, you see the headline, the 53-man projection. It creates an opportunity to keep an extra defensive lineman with Jackson, the Air Force kid, and Ini Iwazurike. Those two for me were very bubbly. It was one spot for 2 guys. Now, if you go 5 receivers, not 6, this creates an opportunity to keep both Ini and Jackson. And I like that. I like that better than a 6 receiver that I'm about 99% sure I'm going to get to my practice squad. Because, folks, I'm going to tell you this now. Only about 10 to 15 players get claimed when they do the 53-man cut thing next week. I think it's next Tuesday. And usually those players are cornerbacks and tackles. So you're like, oh, we love this young receiver. He'll never get through waivers. He will. Audric West, estimate, likely to get cut. He'll get through waivers. If my guess is right, he'll sign on somebody else's practice squad. Broncos would like him back, but I could see him signing somewhere else. And that is one of the positions of interest is how many running backs. I think they keep 4. We've talked about it here on the pod, where R.J. Harvey starts. J.K. Dobbins is the third bound back, could be the starter depending on a matchup. Then you got Jaleel McLaughlin. He missed practice. Congratulations to Jaleel and his girlfriend. I'm not sure if it's his wife, so I apologize. They had their first child this week, so congrats. He's supposed to play still on Saturday. So he would be the third back, and Tyler Bidet the fourth back. And then you look at it and go, well, what about Blake Watson? Watson, I still think, gets through to waivers. He's a nice player, but he was an undrafted free agent. Estimate could get claimed. Maybe you do trade him. A team like Cleveland is looking for a back. You got 3 or 4 teams looking for a back. So maybe you could swing a deal for Estimate and get like a 6th or a 7th or a conditional 6th or 7th, depending on his playing time. I don't think there's a trade market for Blake Watson, but Estimate would have been on other teams' draft boards a year ago. Those are typically teams would trade for because of their intel on him from the previous year. And again, even with Vele, they had the Saints, and it sounded like the Jaguars were in on him as well, and one other team. So maybe Estimate is someone that you can scare up interest in. He has a great game, 70 yards or something against the Saints, and you look to move him for a conditional late-round pick. But I mean, these are the kind of the main roster decisions left. Does Adam Prentice make it initially, and Mike Burton goes on injury reserve with his hamstring? I think that's likely that Burton starts the year on injured reserve. He's an older player, and as far as I know, he's the only player on this team that's won a Super Bowl ring. I'll double check that, but they love Burton. But he's aging. And he's a guy you could you put on injury reserve, or you could cut and put on the practice squad because so few teams need a fullback. But they're looking for tight end / H-back fullback, so it doesn't mean it is Prentice. He played in New Orleans. He has some experience in this offense. So the former CSU kid, you like to see it work out, but that could be someone else. That's a fluid situation. But really, folks, when you look at this roster, the ones of positions of merit, I mean, the receiving position just got clarified, and I believe it's clear that it's going to be 4 running backs, no fullback, no Burton, excuse me. You could keep Prentice, and I believe the Vele move creates an avenue to keep both Iwazurike and Jackson on the defensive line. And man, what a reflection it is of this team's depth that you feel you can trade a Vele. That you feel like with Greenlaw out, and he could play this week, that Justin Strnad could give you several good games in a row. Or if Talanoa Hufanga misses some time, you got P.J. Locke, who could give you some good games in a row. You got multiple options at running back that you feel like you like with Harvey and certainly Dobbins, and the other 2 as well. But last year, I mean, it just didn't work for Javonte Williams. It didn't work. He's probably the worst running back in the league statistically. Tight end is where you're not covered if Ingram gets hurt. I mean, we all like and understand why Adam Troutman's on the team because of his connection to Sean Payton, knowledge of the offense, unbelievable glue guy in the locker room. They miss that. They miss him. Now, Nate Atkins is a tight end they love for his blocking, and he has been hurt. He's expected back likely in week 3. Peyton was saying they don't want to put him out and put him on the shelf for 4 weeks with an injured reserve situation. So they want him back. It creates a spot for Lucas Kroll to make the team. I thought Kroll was going to be cut, but with Atkins hurt, you likely see the 3 tight ends of Ingram, Troutman, and Kroll, and then Atkins would come back, they hope, in week 3 against the Chargers. That's obviously going to be a huge game if there's 2-0 playing a team that swept them last year. But this is where they're in a good spot in that 53-man projection. but they're going to still see. There's still some tape out there, some film for these guys. The eye in the sky doesn't lie to put out there on Saturday. But the first thing we'll all be focusing on is the Broncos starters are going to play. Last week got screwed up. We know that for those who had tickets to the home game. That was going to be your one chance in the preseason to see Bo Nix and crew, and they didn't play. The reason is, quick rewind, they didn't play for those who were listening for the first time, is that they had they had the joint practice one-day scrimmage with the Niners, and then a week later they had a joint practice one-day scrimmage with the Cardinals. Both those went over 2 hours, and because of that, especially the one against the Cardinals, they monitor their rest. They monitor everything with these players, steps, rest, hydration. They decided the starters don't need any more action on Saturday because that's a game that typically Bo Nix and crew would have played almost the whole first half, the entire first half. So instead, they're going to get 2 series, likely 8 to 12 plays against the Saints in week 3. That's unusual. Almost no starters playing week 3. The Browns are playing Joe Flacco. He hadn't started. But like Josh Allen this year, first time in his career, he's not playing in the preseason. And I can't imagine the Bengals put Joe Burrow out there. When he was running for his life the other night in that Monday game against Washington, I'll be honest, it creates pause. Like, do you want to put do you want to put Bo Nix out there in a week 3 preseason game against guys playing for their lives? I mean, you had the reason you do it is because you put the first string line. That's why all the starters have to go out there with them. They're the bodyguards here. So as long as you're committed to it, you have conviction. I'm not crazy about it. I understand why they did it. This is why normally when you do a joint practice, you do it 2 weeks away and you do 2 days in a row, not back-to-back weeks. But Peyton liked this new schedule. He likes the work they got in. It's a more controlled environment when you do it in practice. You can stop and start and teach. Clearly, you can't do that in a game situation, even a preseason game. But what do we want to see? Well, I think we want to see from Nix and the offense one good drive, preferably a touchdown drive, but a scoring drive. Like we saw with Ingram, get action. You want to see maybe a couple of good rushes from a Dobbins or a Harvey. We've said over and over again the importance of the improved running game and what it means to Nix and play action and for his ascension. Because teams will have a book on Nix now, but it won't matter if they have a book if the Broncos are able to run the ball more effectively. From 24th in the league to, around 10, between 9 and 12, 8 and 12. They run the ball that way, they're a playoff team, and they're a playoff team that's going to win either on home or the road in the playoffs. The teams that were top 8 rushing teams last year all made the playoffs. And if they show the ability to rush, that is a huge difference. And it might compromise some of Nix's statistics, but it'll make them a better team and a better offense because they'll be more balanced. And the balanced offense that can run when it wants to and when it has to in January are the teams that win in the postseason. So what do we want to see? Well, you want to see a scoring drive. You want to see Nix look sharp. Again, I've been a little nervous of what I've seen from Nix this summer. Some of those concerns were certainly soothed with the way he played in that Thursday scrimmage against the Cardinals. Completely on point, zipping the ball around. Looked like a guy with total command of the huddle, of the offense, and his targets, on time, on target. And Sean Payton's coaching him hard. I've said this. And it leads, for me, Bo Nix to think too much. He's got to still be athletic. You want Payton to coach him hard, push him, to challenge him, but there's a point where you have to say, go be an athlete. You can't clutter a guy's mind so much he can't play, and he loses that freedom. And you want guys to play free and not worry about mistakes. And so that's the balance. That's the balance they have to strike. So what I want to see from Nix, just on, you want to see a 3-for-4 drive for 42 yards, and then you rush 4 times and you get a touchdown. Preferably it's an 8 to 12 play drive. You get a touchdown. He's got a completion. One of those completions is to Ingram. One of them's to Sutton, and boom, turn the engine off, put the car in the garage, ready to go against the Titans on September 7th. Defensively, just don't want to see a big play. The defense, for the most part, has been great this entire camp. But during the games, they have given up a big play. So whether that's Jaquan McMillan or another corner or whatever, you're going against Spencer Rattler, a guy you absolutely demolished last year. So that first series, you want that to be a 3-and-out defensively. So a couple of 3-and-out series, or maybe only 8 downs total. I look for that defense to put pressure. Again, I wouldn't play Benito coming off the bone spur removed. I still don't think he will, but whatever. I mean, that's their decision. I just don't see any upside to playing him on turf in a game against backups. And I wouldn't play Surtain or Zach Allen. And I'll be interested to see when they all run out there if those three are on the field. But from a defensive standpoint, we just want to see a couple of 3-and-outs or ineffective drives. And then I'll say the final thing I want to see, because we've learned that they have depth, right? Like they're deeper than Tolstoy at this point. Nobody's debating that. But it's a one-score league. Anyone who bets, I'm not a gambler, and a lot of people I'm around do gamble. It's a one-score league. Broncos were 1-6 in those games last year, and they beat 2 playoff teams. They were 2-7, one playing their starters in Tampa Bay, had 1 win against the playoff team on the road. It's a one-score league. It's very difficult to win on the road against good teams. Why do I bring this up? What are you getting? What's your point? Crashaw's got to look better, folks. The punter. Jeremy Crashaw. I don't care that he drives it like Tiger Woods or John Daly off the tee. You got to be able to putt. You got to be able to chip. He's got to show some consistency here. Just because you can boom it, that's not the job. We've seen Wadmania. We've seen Riley Dixon. We had the other guy that's with the Steelers now. I can't even remember his name. He was a guy who could boom it, but he was wildly inconsistent. You cannot give up 10, 15 yards consistently in a game, even with their defense, in a league of one score deciding the outcome. That could be the outcome at the Colts. You laugh, but again, you could lose a game 2017 on the road because of a bad punt late that puts a team in field goal range. You could certainly lose, we saw on special teams last year against the Chargers, on a botched return issue and roughing issue, on a coverage issue. So Crashaw needs to get it going. He's got to get it going. And Sean Payton, he clearly likes him. They like the talent. But you have framed the expectations, Coach, that this is a team capable of winning a Super Bowl. One of the only 8 you've ever had. You cannot sacrifice 10 yards consistently with a rookie punter. So Crashaw, I'm watching you. I don't like watching the punter. Don't like kicking competitions. You want those guys to blend into the furniture and just show up every once in a while with a big play. So we'll see. But Crashaw's got to be better. Lutz is nails, absolute nails, one of the top 5 kickers in the league. But they need better from Crashaw. And it's got to start this week to start settling some nerves. But the roster decision, we saw clarity. Vele's out. I wish him nothing but success. I interviewed him at Link last summer. Fantastic guy, fantastic story. Wish him nothing but success. I understand why they did this trade. It'd almost be criminal not to take that return. But the pressure is on now. Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant to prove that, the summer is not a mirage, that it's going to translate into the regular season. And maybe we see even some of that on Saturday against the Saints. Folks, I'll be back next week with 2 pods. That's the week in between where, roster cuts are made, get a few days off, and then we get into that following week, that Monday game week. Titans v. Broncos. Cam Ward versus that Broncos defense. Starting to feel it. Starting to feel that energy. Folks, I can't thank you enough for listening to the pod, Broncos Country. You're the best. Thank you for the support. As you guys know, I could not do the pod without my sponsors. That's Darby Hoggatt, my A1 from day one. Call him if you've been hurt in a car wreck. Ted Shih. He is one of the best lawyers in the country, family law. Give Ted a call as well. These are friends of mine who can help you out. And the pod is made possible, of course, from Mile High Sports, Nate Lundy, Danny Bailey behind the screen, working his magic. Folks, you know how this works. This Broncos podcast I do for you. Happiness, that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.